Perfect. Okay, hopefully you guys can see me. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason, and I'd really like to first just extend a warm welcome to you that are visiting the Claremont Colleges. And I'm really happy that you took the time to come sit in on this class. And today I'll be giving a guest lecture, a 10-minute presentation on a short poem called The Wanderer. And I know how you might be feeling about this kind of structured poetry activity, and so I'm going to try to make this as fun as possible and as relevant as possible to our lives. And to be honest, I never thought I myself would be the person to like poetry, but after I came here I realized what a liberal arts education is it's really about exploring and about venturing into areas that you're not, or maybe won't be comfortable in, and learning something. And so I really hope that you can find something to connect to out of all the things that I say today. And if nothing else, I hope that you can find it in your heart to resonate with poetry for 10 minutes of your life. And so without further ado, let's jump right into this short poem. It's titled The Wanderer, as I said. It was written in about 1,000 years ago, and we're going to learn all about warriors as they existed in medieval England. So this poem is actually a short 115-line poem, and it was penned in 1975 by an anonymous author, and it's about the emotional and mental heartbreak of a warrior who has lost his brothers and his lord in battle. And so just for a little bit of context, this was a time where books were actually written by hand. And so if we kind of look at just the first page of this poem, it's a short poem, but someone spent a lot of time making this. And really, if we're looking at it, it's really kind of quite beautiful. And so really, I'm looking at this, it's really neat and well scribed for something during that time. And so if we kind of look at this, you might realize that we don't know actually a lot of these words, and that's because it's written in the native tongue at the time, which was Middle English. And so, again, this poem is speaking to the warrior's struggle when he loses his brothers. And so it offers us a unique opportunity to go back in time and actually look at, well, what is this warrior? And what can we learn about warriors from this poem? And so some of the inspiration for choosing this poem for this 10-minute lecture was that it really appears in our lives, and we see it a lot. My first exposure to the warrior was actually in this game. Many of you are probably 1 or 2 years too young for this, but it's this game that really exploded when I was in middle school, and it's called RuneScape. And that's really where you are a warrior, and your goal is to be the best, the richest, and you go out and you try to win fights, you try to collect resources. And during the time I never realized this, but you take on the role of a contemporary hero, and that's the warrior. And this also appears in modern day video games. Many of the video games we have today, you can take on the role of this protagonist, this hero, that goes on to do many glorious tasks, such as slaying other things or finding the princess and saving her. And of course, they also appear in movies and also in literature. And based on these kind of exposures we have in modern day, it's really easy to say that, yeah, the warrior is a real hero. He's, sometimes he can be invincible. And we really associate the warrior with somewhat of a glorified fighter. And so this poem comes out of a time where the warrior actually exists. And so it allows us to ask the question, what makes a warrior a warrior? And The Wanderer, this short poem, is a great opportunity to kind of see what we know and see if it's right. Um, so, uh, 975 was a time where warriors were actually kind of the center of society, you know. And really, this is because land and resources at the time were scarce, and they were dictated by battles between neighboring tribes. And so, because of this, um, men, if you're a man of the tribe, you often aspired to be a warrior, and you wanted to defend your kingdom. And this kind of fighting over land and resources was cyclic, because that there was this sort of code, and the code was that, if you get attacked, you gotta attack back, and if your brother gets killed, you gotta kill your attacker's brother, and if his brother's dead, you go kill two of his cousins. And so, this kind of spirit, this eye for an eye spirit, is at the core of this code. Um, but there's really an underlying um, part of this code that we don't often see, and that's that um, warriors are family to each other, and they're linked, um, as brothers and brothers are linked, and because they share this kind of experience, of going into battle and not knowing what's going to happen and being on the verge of life and death, they have this connection um, that is kind of unbreakable. And really, um, because of this connection, they have this kind of do or die mentality. That I would do anything for my brother. Um, and they're really linked in moral duty to each other. And so, um, usually, we're going to associate warriors as these soldiers that are protecting their state. And um, that's, in most contexts, what we've come to believe. And yeah, it makes sense. But in The Wanderer, we're looking at a warrior who's not fighting. He's expressing his emotions. And really, The Wanderer is writing about how he's alone and how he's lost his brothers in battle. And not only his brothers, but he also lost his lord, and he's unmarried. So this poem is really his lament, and he reveals a lot about himself in this poem. So why is he so sad? Great question. Well, let's see what he writes about, and maybe we can see why he's sad. And if we know why he's sad, we know what he cares about, what he misses. And the first thing he writes about, and it's really apparent, he really misses his family, his brothers. He misses his Lord. And so if we kind of go back to the poem itself, I think some of the lines that he writes are really, really powerful, and they really speak to his emotional heartbreak. He is, quite simply, sore for the want of his dear Lord, and he feels like the man who has no beloved protectors. Sorrow renews as the memory of kinsmen moves through his mind. He greets them with glad words, eagerly looks at them, a company of warriors. He's starting to dream about his brothers. He recalls the hall warriors and taking of treasure, how in his youth his gold friend made him accustomed to feasting. And so really, yeah, life sucks without your friends, but it's really more than that. This warrior is really valuing his relationship to his king, or his kin and brothers and Lord. And so when we think about a warrior as a soldier, it's really easy to forget the kind of emotional complexity associated with this human being. But in fact, in this poem, we can see that the wanderer is actually defined by his loved ones. And without them, he loses purpose and he starts to go crazy. He writes about how he dreams about being back with them and doing the things that they did. And so, if we're looking at kind of a revised version of our video game warrior, he's not just slaying dragons, he has a big heart too. So life is hard. But what does the warrior do? And this goes back to the warrior code, because the warrior code kind of dictates that you do or die trying. And in everything, you got to put in your effort. And so this warrior, the wanderer, is kind of bound by this code. And he actually writes about how he continues to live life even though it's really hard. So every day, he writes about the simple things that he hates to do, but he does them anyways. These things remind him of his brothers and his Lord, the people that he misses so much. He crosses the woven waves. He wakens to see the seabirds bathe, all while treading the tracks of exile. And so what's the woven waves? Well, he sends his weary heart out over to the woven waves, and this renews care in him. So he does all these things because the warrior code dictates that he continues living. And yeah, life is hard, but he learns to deal with it. And yeah, he's going to write about how he's sad too. He simply says, all delight is gone. A little more eloquently, all of Earth's kingdom is wretched. The world beneath the skies is changed by the work of the fates. So really he's saying his life is being catapulted into something he can't control. It's by fate now. And he doesn't like that. He's sad about it. But at the same time, he still learns to live his life. And yes, he has to take time to be sad, but he still treads along. And he writes that this changes him, because he writes that no man may indeed become wise before he has had his share of winters. So I guess the take home here is that, yeah, life will have challenges. And sometimes you have no control. And we have challenges too, just like the warrior. He loses his purpose, and he doesn't know why he's alive anymore. And so some of the things we're facing, and if we're kind of if I try to put myself in your shoes, some of these things might be simple things like not knowing which school we want to go to, or not knowing what we want to study, or not knowing what we want to do in our lives, or even, similar to the wanderer, dealing with loss of a loved one. And so, yeah, we can feel the same emptiness that he describes. And maybe we can also have the same solution that he has as well. That is, yeah, you can live life with the struggle of having no purpose. And so my final take home is on the contemporary idea of this warrior. And we usually think of this guy as, a figure of great strength, heroism, infallibility. And really, we can learn a lot from literature. And when we look at this poem, we can learn a lot about this figure that steps into so many different aspects of our lives: video games, movies, television, books. And all this time, we're assuming things about his identity, but at the heart of it all, it's easy to forget that the warrior is just human. He loves his family and brothers, and he has struggles just like us. And so it's really cool to me that reading this poem allowed me to go back in time to see the way that identity can be researched through literature. And if nothing else, I hope you can find some connection to this guy right here. And next time you have a problem, I hope you can remember the wanderer who went through struggles of his own and still lived on. And if you can remember him, I hope that you too will find your inner warrior and keep going. The wanderer did it 1,000 years ago. You can definitely do it. Thank you.